All right, everybody. So welcome to this talk. So today, I already have shared some of the links. So let me just share those links again. So we have all the I shared all the links, useful links that we're going to be working through. So we're going to be using Twitter API, obviously. So if you haven't created a project on Twitter, go ahead and sign up for developer portal in Twitter and get your Twitter access key. So this is how you get it. So once you create a project and once you're signed up, you're just going to click on the keys and token, and you're just going to generate a bearer token. So I have already generated mine, and I put it in. I have it copied in my local machine. So if you haven't done it, so please go ahead and do that. You can also take a look at Tailwind CSS documentation. So Tailwind is something that we're using for styling our app, although like it's all set up in the starter kit. So you don't really need to know any Tailwind to follow along if you want to. And we also have our sample app. So the sample app repository is right here. The final version is on the main, so on the main branch, and the starter version is on the starter branch. All right. Okay, so chat to everybody. All right, and awesome. And you can also take a look at the final project. So this is our final project pretty much. So I can put in Twitter names, and I can basically get all the data back from Twitter. So you can see my top hashtags, mentions, and all that. Hey, I see someone just raising hand. You can just put in the questions in the Q&A section, or we'll get to them eventually. You don't really have to raise hands or anything, but yeah. All right, so let's. So this is our final project. We can also take a look at the reports. So these are the reports that we saved. So basically, the one I showed you, and we saved them. So this is my friend's Twitter, and we saved them in FaunaDB, which is a database, hosted database. You don't really have to do anything other than installing a simple npm package. So we're going to get to all that. Okay. So let's go ahead and open up our terminal, and let's go ahead and create the new project. So I'm going to be using Next, which is a SSR React framework. So if you're not familiar with Next.js, don't worry. It's just React with a little extra functionality. For example, like React Router just comes pre-packed with Next.js. They call them Next Router. So things like that. It's nothing too different. All right, so we're going to do npx create next app -e, and then the URL for the starter kit. So what we're saying here is, hey, create a new Next application, and with the -e flag, I'm saying based it off on our sample starter code. And this is the starter code, and that's the URL that I just got. Okay. All right. So that's that. So let's go ahead and hit enter. And this is going to bootstrap our application. So let's just wait for it. So while at it, so my app. Maybe I can't. App. Okay, there you go. Just name our project. Okay, so while at it, let's go ahead to the Twitter developer portal. So here in the products, you can go into Twitter API. So click here, and you will see that all the APIs that you can use. So we're going to be using 2 Twitter endpoints, and one of them is user. So we're going to take a look at user by username. So here's a quick trick that you can use. You can just go read the documentation. And here, once you're in the documentation, let me just close that one up. You can just say, hey, run this on Postman. And what this will allow you is going to open up Postman in your browser. And let's just wait for it. And from here, you can technically just run all the Twitter endpoint on your browser, which is pretty cool. So for example, you can see here, Twitter API and user lookup. So you can just pretty much run them in here. So if it's your first time, you just have to like log in and fork this whole collection, and it's going to put it in your workspace. So I already did that, so I'm just going to go to my workspace. Yeah, we are going to make the recording available. Okay, so let's go into my workspace, and I can see like, okay, this is my Twitter fork, and this is the tweet endpoints. So we're interested in user by username. So I'm gonna show you like how to work with it in a bit. All right, so let's go back to our terminal. So our app is done. So I can go to my tweet app, just cd into, oh, maybe that's not the one. Okay, so I can just cd into this. Not sure why I did that. Okay, so it's my tweet app, just cd into it. Just do code dot and open up our code. All right, awesome. So here, this is our code for the code, for the starter code. And here you can see like I already have Tailwind installed and ready to go for you guys to follow. So you don't really have to do much there. All right, so let's go ahead and run this application just to make sure everything's running as expected. And we're going to go to localhost 3000 and let's wait for it to boot up for the first time. And there you have it. All right, so here we have a simple application running. Let me just open up the console. All right. Simple application running. So we have a home page and a report page. So this is our nav. So we can just navigate between two pages. And let's take a look at the code for that, right? So under pages, we have the index, and this is our main page. So this is this page. And the form, we have a form component, and it is under components form. And this is just a simple form component. And if you're already familiar with React, you know, this is, you know, exactly what this is doing. We're just setting a state, data, set state, and on submit form, it just doesn't really do anything. So we can just test it out. On submit form, we'll just see a console log coming up. So that's our first page. And our second page is a reports page, which is another page right here. So under reports, index, and this is our reports page, and it's just showing us a header. Now, if you go into underscore app.js, you see that we have added the navbar component. So whatever you add in here, it's going to appear in all of the pages. And just like, so similar to React Router, you have like all these routes and links in Next.js as well. Now, in Next.js, we can just put, create our React page components under these folders, and it will just automatically catch it and create those routes for us, which is pretty neat. All right, awesome. So that's about it for the starter code. So next, so we already talked about Twitter API. So let's take a look at the Twitter API again. So here, the first thing we're going to do, we're going to be able to type in our name and submit it, and you know, get information back from Twitter. So how do we do that? So we're going to look for this specific example. So user by username. So now here you can actually play around with it. So for example, here I've been actually playing around with it. So make sure go to authorization and bearer token and paste in that bearer token you received from your dashboard. And once you have that, you can just send, and you'll see that it's actually giving us data back. Now, here's one neat thing you can do. It actually auto-generates code for us. So right here, you see I have JavaScript fetch, and I can, yeah, that's a lot of A's, yes. So here you can actually choose your favorite language, and I just chose JavaScript fetch, and it actually auto-generates the code for us. So all we have to do pretty much is just copy this and paste it in our application, and we'll be off to the races. All right, so let's go ahead and look at our application again. Okay, so Next.js is different in a way that it is also sort of like a full stack application framework, but for React. So if you go under pages, APIs, and whatever you put in here, they become backend endpoints. And that's really important because Twitter API does not allow you to make API calls from front end. So that's why we are kind of using Next.js, and that's why we're like securing our token and everything. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at how this works. Okay, so in order to test this endpoint, all we have to do is go into API, and we just copy the name of the file. So the name of the file becomes the route, and with the route, we're gonna pass in a username. So I can just pass in my username, and we're gonna get an error, which is fine because none of these things are actually implemented. So if you take a look, I'm getting get tweets and get user data from Twitter API, which is a function, which is a util function. So under utils, I have a file called Twitter API, and this is where we're going to be making our API calls. Okay. Now, when you're building like a big React project, it is always a good idea to break your application down into smaller pieces, and that's exactly what we're doing here. So user data, we just called the get user data from this. Okay. So now I think it's complaining because these things are null. So I can just make a ternary statement here and do it again. You'll see sample endpoint is working, user data not implemented, tweet not implemented. So it's actually getting not implemented from here. All right, awesome. So now what we're gonna do, we're gonna add, we're gonna start adding the get user data. So we're gonna start implementing that user data endpoint. So I'm just gonna do little copy pasting from here. So don't worry if you can't see my screen. It's all gonna be there. So change the var to let. Okay, all right. So here, what I did, I just copy pasted that Postman auto-generated code here. And what I did, I just changed that bearer token to process env Twitter token. So instead of reading it, like hard coding it here, we're gonna read it from env file. Okay, so now all I gotta do is replace this with my Twitter token. So let me just find my token and it's always like, it's a huge string of characters. So hopefully I pasted it right. And then we have to actually restart our application just because we kind of, just because we changed environment variable, it might not recognize it. All right, so we did that. So now we have our headers set up. So now let's go ahead and start creating that call itself. So what we're going to do here is we can get rid of this and const response equals await fetch. And yeah, I'm just going to copy that huge string huge string from there. And we also need to pass in the request options. Okay, let's make it tidier a little bit. And once we have that, all we can do, we can just return that response. So return await response.json. All right, so now if I go back over here, go back to my, let me make sure I saved everything. Okay, so now if I go back over here, I enter, you see I'm actually getting some data back, and we're getting data back from Twitter itself. So you can see, okay, so user data, this is my user ID, this is my name, description, and entities and all that stuff. So that's it. So our first Twitter endpoint is working. So let's go ahead and implement the second one as well. So we can just like copy paste the similar structure here and go ahead and change the user right there. Okay, so here we're just passing in the user ID instead of the username. And we got the timeline API. So let me just show you which timeline API I'm talking about. So we go over here and user timeline by ID. This is the endpoint I used. And here in the max result, you can actually put in 100 or whatever. Sorry, if we're going a little fast, like there's a lot of things to cover. So I apologize for going a little fast, but you can always ask a question. And this is recorded, by the way, and the final code is also here. So I apologize if we're going a little fast, just because we have some time constraint, but you can always hit me up on Twitter and I'll be happy to walk you through. Yeah. All right, so yeah, so we're using the Twitter timeline API here, and here in the Twitter fields, we can just pass in different comma-separated values. So you can actually get these values from here, like a success response from here. So so I'm just gonna copy everything, go to timeline, just paste it in, and yeah, like you see, this generated that API URL, and you can just pretty much do the same thing and copy it. All right, so let's go ahead over here and get tweets. Similar API endpoint, and let me make sure I put the request options. Yes, I did. All right. All right, and awesome. So we have this. Now, if we go back to Twitter Analytics, which is this file, so now you can see that we're going to get the tweets, and we don't need this message anymore. So we're going to get the user data, we're going to get the tweets. And now if I go over here, okay, I can just close that other one. And if I hit this, and you see I got like all the tweets and all my timeline all the way up to like my first 100 tweets, and entity, like all my hashtags and all that stuff in here. So all the data is here now. Now all we got to do in our tracker, which is display this data. So our API endpoint is working. Okay, so I think I'm going to make a slight change here. So here, instead of user.data, because instead of putting it in a separate level, I can just do this. Data. Let's go ahead and make sure this is working. And it is. So you see user data and tweets data. All right, awesome. Okay, so our Twitter APIs are working now. Okay, so next, what we're gonna do, we are going to go, so let's go back over here. So we're gonna do on submit. So we were manually getting that. So on submit, we just wanna hit this API endpoint and get all our data from this form, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. So we're gonna go back to the index page and go to the form component. So this is the form component. And in the form component, you'll see that submit form. And right now, submit form just doesn't do anything. So let's go ahead and create, implement this submit form function. So on submit form, we are going to call an API, which is like the Next.js internal API, right? So I'm going to create a try catch, and if something happens, we just log out, console log out the error. Otherwise, we can just do response, and I'm going to do await, fetch, API analytics, username. Okay, let me see. Okay, do you use particular package to load .env file? No. So with Next.js, everything comes prepackaged, and that's the beautiful thing about Next.js. So you don't have to install anything like env, like those env packages. You don't have to install React Router. You don't have to install, you don't even have to install like modular CSS stuff, and if you want to use Tailwind or like modular CSS, it's also like really simple to set up. Actually, I have this opened. That's why the Tailwind reference. So you can take a look at it if you want to set it up from scratch. So to answer your question, no, you don't have to install anything. So it's all prepackaged, but you can change it if you want to. So I would highly encourage taking over the document, looking up the documentation on how to do it. All right, awesome. So we get the response here. And once we get the response, we just want to set data and set the response. All right. Okay, so we want to set the data and set our response over here. And let's go ahead and try it out. So I hope I spelled it right. And there you go. And we submitted the API endpoint, and we got, it submitted, and we got the response back, and the data was set to that data. So actually, I'm going to show you guys a quick trick. So if you go to component, and if you go to the form page, you'll be able to see that our state is now user data and tweets, because that's the state we were using. That's the set data hook that we used to set the data for this component. All right, so now you might be wondering, okay, but where these things come from? Okay, let's go over them quick. So this is just a package, and this is our first package that we actually installed. Now, this is because we based our project based on the starter kit. This was already installed, but this package, this raw data, like you see how the JSON data is viewed, it's called dynamic JSON view. Okay, so that's the package that's actually viewing the data like this, raw data like this. So let's go to our code. I'll show you guys what it means, like what I mean by that. Okay, so here's our report component. And report component takes the data that we set here. Now let's go into the report component, and dynamic React JSON component is just this React JSON view. So if you go ahead and take a look at it here, and we'll see like this is a package. So we just plugged our data in the package. Okay, now you might be wondering, Shadid, what the heck is this? Dynamic. What kind of import is this? Well, this is the newer ES6 feature where we can dynamically import things. Now in React, we might not be able to do it, or we might have to like install some third-party packages to do this. But in Next.js, we can just dynamically import certain stuff, like certain libraries. But why do you want to do it? That's the next question. Well, because if you take a look at here, if you take a look at this component here, it has tons of data, right? And we only want to render this component when there is data. So that's where dynamic import comes in. That's why in ES6, like you have this new feature, dynamic import feature, where it only renders if it's necessary, and otherwise, like it doesn't render because you don't want to use up space. So that's a cool feature. I thought I demonstrate that. And SSR false means okay, don't use the server-side rendering. So you can look, you can read more about SSR. This is like some advanced concept. We're not going to go too deep into it. Like, just know that SSR means like it's server rendered. All right, so that's about it. So that's pretty much it for our form component. Okay, so now next, what we want to do, we want to save our. So we're displaying our data. And this is just some CSS that I created. And, these are just CSS classes, Tailwind utility class to be exact. All right, so next, what we want to do, we want to save our report. Okay, so we're going to be saving our report in a database called Fauna. And so let's go ahead and let's go ahead and go to Fauna. So I'm going to go to fauna.com and set up a database. And if you are looking to save JSON data, and you also want like relationships and stuff, this is a really easy database to get started, especially if you're just a front-end developer, or if you're an indie developer, or you're a startup. It's affordable. And this is free plan, and you don't really need any credit card or anything to get started. All right, so I'm going to go to Fauna, create a database. Okay, so I'm going to name my database live 5 or 6. It's a live stream. And I'm going to give it a region group of global. So by global, it's going to fetch the data from its nearest location. So we don't really have to worry about it. And in the collection, I want to save my reports in the report collection, right? So I'm going to name this collection report, and that's about it. So if you're setting up Fauna from scratch, the link for this is also provided in the talk. You just only install this FaunaDB npm package, and you're off to the races. You can just connect to FaunaDB. Now, we also want to make our app kind of secure, right? Like we just don't want anybody to make changes to our database. So we go to security and create a role for our app. So let's create a role. I'm going to call it my next app. And collection, I'm going to call it report. So we're going to have read and create permission for our app. So once I created that role, I can go back to security and keys, create a key for that, and never choose admin, because you don't want to give people, like, you don't want to ship admin keys with your application. That's just a really bad practice. So choose the role you just created and name your key. I'm going to name my key. and we got the key. Okay, now let's go back to our code. Okay, so we're back in our code, and we're gonna go change the environment variable again. So .env, and here I can just replace this with the fauna key. All right, that's about it. And then we have to restart our server again. So let's go back over here. So let's go back to our application. So now on save report, I want to save this report to Fauna. So how do I do that? So let's go back to our form component actually. So here in our form component, you'll see that on save, on button click, I fire this function, save report function. But look, the save report function is technically calling another function, which is just passing the data in there. And this function is again inside utils/db. So let's go ahead and take a look at that function. And this is where we're going to have our database functions. So you see like the modularization of our code. So in order to write more maintainable code, it's always a good idea to break your code down into like smaller pieces, like here, like I'm showing you here. So here we just did like some Fauna setup, like configuration stuff. So there's a detailed tutorial here, like if you want to dive deep into FaunaDB and how you save, data, update data, how you perform CRUD functions and things like that. Yeah, so if you're familiar with MongoDB or Firebase, it's very similar. All right, so here I'm gonna save the report, and wow, my linter is smart enough to actually write the code for me, but I don't like it. At least I have to do some work. So yeah, GitHub Copilot. Yep. All right, so let's go ahead and save the report data. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay. So again, I'm going to do a try catch again. Do a try catch, and I'm going to do, oops, I'm going to do, so if there's an error, just console log the error, and I'm going to const response and wait, and then db client query. So db client query is just telling us, okay, run a query in FaunaDB, and q.create function tells us that, hey, we want to create something in collection report. So not reports, because we name our collection report. And then we create this, and then data payload, maybe just spread the payload here, like that. And that's about it. And then we just do console.log response. And that's response. And then what we can do, we can just do an alert, report saved successfully. All right, so let's go ahead and try it out. Okay. Make sure my app is running, everything is good. Okay, I'll save reports, and report saved successfully. Okay, now if we go back to Fauna in the collections, hey, look, everything is saved. And you can, and just because it's like a JSON store, like it's NoSQL, it saves everything, even the emojis. So yeah, so no data loss saving. So everything is there. All right, awesome. So now, okay, so now we have our data saving. Okay, so next what we're gonna do, we're gonna try to pull all the saved reports in here in our all reports folder, all reports page. So to do that, To do that, we're going to go to pages under reports, index, and this is where all reports are at. So I'm gonna try to fast code this because we're running out of time a little bit. So bear with me here. So first, I'm gonna bring use effect here, and in the use effect, I'm gonna say list all reports, which is a function, and I'm gonna create that function. And in that function, I'm gonna call get all reports, and get all reports is again coming from the util.db, right? And get all reports is going to be this one. And this is similar to what we did here. Instead of creating one, we're just going to get all the reports that already exist. So we can start with a try catch here again. So try catch. And then what we're going to do, okay, so we can just do a console log error. So if there is an error, and then we can do, yes, this repository is available for everybody to take a look. I already posted in the chat and also in the event page. So yes, it is available for everybody to take a look. The starter is on the starter branch. On the main branch, we have the completed repository. So yes, it is available for everybody to take a look. And feel free to use it by any means, like fork it, use it. Yeah, play around with it. All right. So now let's go back over here. Okay, so in the DB, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create a const response void DB client. Let's just do that. And here I'm gonna do q.map. So map is just like JavaScript map, and q.paginate. It is, so if you're familiar with Mongoose or something like that, like we're kind of doing like a chaining of operations for our database. So if you're familiar with Mongoose or Firebase, it's kind of similar operation that we're doing. We're getting all the we're paginating all the response from the report collection, and yeah, we're just getting them back. And I can also do this lambda functions, lambda expression, which works like JavaScript arrow functions, and you don't really have to do it. Like it's still going to give you the value, but I like to make my data appear more nicely. If that makes sense. Just organize it nicely. So yeah, that's what this lambda function does. It's just an arrow function that's getting each individual records and putting it in order. All right, so that's that. And get all reports. So now if we go to our form page, is it in our form? Oh no, not our form page, an index page. So this is where we're going to get all the reports. So let me just console log this as well. Okay, so let's console log it. So let's go back over here, and you can see that reports are coming back. It's an array of data. All right, so that's that. So what we want to do next is we want to, okay, so let me take a look at the component. And this is the reports component. And yes, so we already have the data. So now we just want to map that data and map it over there. So what we can do, we can just create a map. And I kind of just copied this from the final version. And this is just a simple mapping, reports map. And then I'm just looping over all the instances and all the instances of data and putting them in there. And it gives me an error because, yeah, I know exactly why that is. Because in our DB, maybe we can just return response data. And no, that will not work. Oh, that does work. It's just saying class name list is not found. Okay, so some styling is missing. And okay, so I can just get it from the import that style from source styles, report styles. So these are just constants, and I just drop some Tailwind Tailwind CSS class in there. Okay, so yeah. Alternatively, we could have just removed this and put that Tailwind class, like all those Tailwind classes here. But it makes your DOM kind of noisy. That's why I kind of put them in a different file. So like this, because, you know, one of the main complaint about Tailwind is that it makes your DOM noisy. So that's why I created that. But yeah, so now if we go back over here, we should see this. And yeah, so this is one of the records. So now if I click on it, I go to reports and that route. And let me show you where that is happening. So if you go take a look at the report, so this is the link, and this is just like React Router link. And the href is reports and report ref value ID, like the ID of that particular report. So this is going to take us to that route, and it's actually going to render this reports ID, this weird looking component page. So whenever you put this type of syntax, Next.js already knows that, okay, we're trying to go to a reports route, and this route parameter, which is this parameter, is going to be dynamic. And then what we can do, we can actually use router from Next.js and grab that ID from the router and sort of display it and do whatever with it in our component level. Okay. Okay. So what we can do here, we can actually get information about that individual report that we saved. So I'm going to use another use effect, but this time I'm going to have a listener to ID. And if ID is present, go ahead and get that report. Just not do it like that. So I'm going to get current report. And this is just going to be another method, async method, and const response get report ID. And we're again using that dbutil method, and we're setting the response here. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at that get report. And similarly, we can just literally just copy paste it from here in the CRUD. So in the CRUD, you'll see that there is there's one for a querying collection. So we can literally copy paste that to get a report data. So let me just take a look at how, here. So getting report data. Oh, let's make a try catch again inside, and console.log error. And then inside the try, I can const response await db query. So as you can see, like db client.query is that's the pattern for like creating these FaunaDB queries. And then we can do q.get q.get and q.ref, because we already know the reference and collection is going to be the report. Oh, that's just my timer. Ignore it. I think we're already in the 45 minutes mark. Anyways, that's fine. We can just go over a little bit. All right, awesome. So we got our response. And once we get our response, we can just return the response like this. And we're good. Awesome. So let's go back over here. And I should probably see something popping up. Okay, get report data. Didn't save it. So right here, console.log, save the response. Okay, so response.data is what we need. Response.data. And I can just plug in the old report component here as well, just to make things nicer. Okay, so set data. Okay, let's do response.data. And okay, right. Because if the data doesn't exist, don't render anything, so return loading. There you go. All right, so that's that. Now we have a reference to individual reports. So we can go to home, we can look up a tutor and look it up. We can save them. And once they're saved, we can look up the lists and click them and then retrieve the list. So that's pretty much it. Now, if you take a look at the final, project, I also have 2 more cards, which is just taking that, taking the same data, which is here, and then refining that data and visualizing the data, and getting the hashtags and most timeline, most mentions, and then displaying them here. You can play around with it. So let me tell you where that component is. So that component is in the main branch. It's in the details card component. And when you plug in that data, that happens. So I would encourage you to take a look at this and look at the CSS inside there. I mean, it's nothing complicated. It's just a CSS component that's just refining the data with a couple for loops. So yeah, I encourage you guys to kind of go over the whole project and look up and try to hook this component up as well. And that's about it. We can also deploy this. So all we have to do, npx vercel --prod, or just npx vercel. So once you do that, this is going to deploy to vercel. So make sure, if you want to deploy to vercel, make sure you have a vercel.com account. You can also do it on Netlify if you want to. So that's pretty much it. Okay, Esmail, I'm struggling to understand because I'm total novice. Novice? Is there any room for learning from scratch? Yes, there is. So basically what I would suggest, break this down into like smaller pieces, okay? Like, again, this is a whole project. So what I would say, if you want to get started, start with creating a simple, actually for you, start with understanding how the Twitter API works. So first, go to the workspace, fork it, and then just make requests, like send requests and then auto-generate code and play around with it. that should be step one for you. After you're comfortable playing around with it, just create a node script or any type of script. Don't go to React, don't go to nothing, no framework. Just create those scripts and hit the API, and just get comfortable with receiving the data and looping over the data to kind of massage the data. So once you're comfortable with it, then come back to this repository and try to break it down. If you don't know React, I would not suggest that you try out Next.js. I would say if you were absolutely new to React, then just do some beginner courses with React, like make sure how the form submission works, make sure how to call an API with React and things like that. So yeah, so this project is more focused on like, it's kind of a beginner intermediate project, but it's more focused on like how you actually build production level bigger React application. It's not just it's not for like complete beginners. It's more of a walkthrough of creating how to build real world applications with best practices in mind. So if you're a total newbie, go back to your basics, look at the Twitter API, look at Fauna, like how, look at their very, they got some like really beginner level tutorial here. So look how a database works and how you save data in Fauna, and go from there.
Yeah, thanks, Shadid. And I think we already started to answer the questions. Yeah, just a reminder, you can continue to put in questions into the Q&A. We got some time for more. But yeah, Shadid, thank you so much for sharing. Just want to emphasize that this whole thing is recorded. There's a lot of information in there that I think will be good for review. So yeah, we'll make sure to let you all know when the recording is ready. All right, so the question I think is Ruvalter. They ask, in your app, it seems like the only way to fetch tweets is by calling the get tweets method. Is there a feature on the Twitter API where we can listen to new tweets and display it as they are created?
Yes. Yeah, so Twitter does have a real-time API. Now, you need a elevated, I think you need a elevated access. So I'm using Essential, and you need an elevated access. And then there's a tons of stuff, like when you start paying Twitter for their API, there's a tons more data that you can actually get, like volume filtered, you can even get like analytics and engagement and things like that. But you do have to, like, I believe you do have to have an elevated Twitter API to do those things. And yeah, once you look at the elevated documentation, that Postman is slightly different. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, I did not know there's you can have the elevated version. Okay, it's pretty cool. Yeah. All right, so Ismail also asked, for a starter like me, do you mean we can always just get started by going to Fauna? Like, yeah, like, getting you said that it's easy to get started. Yes, is there anything that people need to know if you want to get started on Fauna?
Yeah, I mean, the best place, if you know some JavaScript, I would say like it's really to get started with Fauna. If they have like this tutorials and stuff like that. Yeah, you can also follow the Fauna blog if you're completely new in database. Yeah, so just fauna.com/blogs or fauna.com/docs. Yeah, docs.fauna.com is another good place.
Yeah. Nice. I mean, any Fauna related questions, just feel free to ask Shadid. I mean, it does work for them, so that's great. Yeah. Okay, I think our time is about up. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And I hope that this event is helpful. I'm going to do a little bit of edits for the recording, but once it's done, it's going to be on the event page. And I just want to make a quick announcement. So next week, we're going to have another technical event, and it's going to be on Cypress, which is a testing tool. It's going to be, yeah, beginner friendly. The speaker is a Google developer expert in Angular, and he's gonna do some testing, with some of your examples. Yeah, so feel free to sign up and join for that. I'm gonna put all the links in the chat so you can grab it before you go. So let me just post it real quick. Yeah, as you can see, Shadid's Twitter is also in there if you want to follow up with him, ask more questions. Yeah, he'll be available. Another special announcement I want to make is that we're going to have a special event called the Developer Growth Summit. Basically, it's a series of events of many different talks. It's going to be on a diverse range of topics. So yeah, feel free to check it out. The link is also in the chat. So before we officially end, Shadid, just want to thank you again for taking the time to show us how to build a Twitter tracker with React. And I just want to know if there's any final remarks, any encouragement that you want to leave to the audience before we go.
Yeah, yeah. If you guys have any questions, any feedback, something I could have done better, just let me know on Twitter. If you need any help with any of the technology that I showed today, just shoot me a direct message shoot me a DM on Twitter, and I try to be responsive, and I'll try to help you. So thank you.